we're Jen and David from Love Intersections.
And welcome to Hot Pot Talk Season 4. Today's episode is with Chris Boreland from Elbo Patties. So maybe, Chris, maybe we'll get you to introduce yourself.
So my name's Christopher Leopold Boreland. I go by Chris or I go by Leo, whichever one's fine. Pronouns are he, him, they, them. I am a queer Caribbean that owns a Jamaican patty company here in Vancouver.
Tell us about the Jamaican patty company.
Yeah, so the Jamaican patty company is called Elbo Jamaican Patties. I've opened Elbo 6 years ago. As I guess a gateway into really finding myself and finding my identity in the culinary world and really kind of just doing something for myself. I was playing around making empanadas at the time because that's all I would do at the Spanish restaurants I worked at.
Right.
And I was like, okay, it's very similar to a Jamaican patty. Did some research, started making my own. And it kind of just grew from there. It became like a staff meal for a lot of the industry folks in Gastown, because that's where I worked for 7 years. And then it was a side hustle. And now it's grown into its full-grown, full-time gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had you were mentioning when we were cooking some of the dynamics or when you started and after you finished culinary school, trying to find yourself in the industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so in the culinary industry, especially back in the day, I've been cooking for about 20 years now, and I found it to be quite toxic, being, slightly homophobic.
Macho?
Thank you, yes. Yeah. Macho and degrading women as well, right? So it's like, it wasn't really a safe space for anybody in that kitchen, and I also noticed everyone at the time, things have changed obviously, they were dealing with something as far as finding a gateway to I guess silence whatever it is they're going through. Right. So it's like they always have like that gateway drug, I like to say, be it alcohol or actual hard drugs.
Which is so rampant in the restaurant industry.
Very. And it wasn't until I had I moved here where, because I guess I felt like no one knew me, I was a bit more free to speak my mind and do what I want.
Right.
Where I really started campaigning more in the institution that I worked at, speaking on mental health and really like kind of building a better culture around that and really speaking to each other as human beings, because that was one thing that was very lacking. So when I was, I guess, getting into the culinary world, again, identifying early on that I didn't fit that criteria, how can I make it my own?
Right.
I mean, that's just like every queer narrative,
honestly.
Outsiders as a kid growing up, feeling like a black sheep and not fitting in, not conforming.
Yeah.
Why would you want to, for one thing? But really just I think as queers, we just embody that sense of like disruption to normativity.
Absolutely.
Right. So I love that about you.
Yeah. When I said, let's burn this down.
But tell me about the Auntie t-shirt.
It's funny, when I was in the stages of kind of developing Elbo, my cousin who lives in Ontario would come down, and we didn't really grow up together, but we're also very close in age. But again, we didn't grow up because we were both keeping our sexuality very quiet. So we kind of knew, but we didn't say anything. Right? It's like, I clock you, but I'm not going to say anything because it's just the family, we left that alone.
Yeah.
But when I came out here, like I said, and I came out, he was a lot more comfortable kind of coming out to me. So he would come every summer and stay with us. And the one summer that I was developing things, that's when I'd say I really fell in love with like Caribbean food. So I was cooking for him and we're having conversations. He's sitting on the couch and we both had a moment in which we felt like we were our parents.
Right.
The aunties in the kitchen drinking tea and cooking.
Yeah.
So I was like, I love that. And I was just like, that's how I want my brand to be. I want people to feel like you're home. And you know, what you're eating is something that your mom or your aunties are cooking for you, and it's just no bells, no whistles, just simple food.
Yeah, tell us about the dish that we made today.
Yeah, so this is the brown stew chicken, something near and dear to my heart, because this is the one thing I would say that really brings me back to home. Home being Ontario, Scarborough, Scarborough. So this is a dish that my mom would make most of every Sunday. It's one of the less complicated dishes that she would make, because like she would do like a curry goat or cow's foot or oxtail, all very delicious. But this was the star because one, it's simple, easy, and it just wins over everybody. Yeah. And for myself, I would say this is probably one of the first dishes that I was able to create on my own. That kind of reminded me of home when I moved here. Because again, being in Vancouver, there's not a lot of Caribbean restaurants, especially like 13 years ago when I was here. There was practically just one. So it was a lot of just like self-serving and at home and trying to make it work.
Maybe Chris, can you tell us a little bit about why you chose this dish?
Yeah, so this dish is something that's kind of dear to my heart. Growing up in Ontario, having immigrant parents, my mother, both from Jamaica, my mom and my dad, I never really connected with Caribbean food. You know, I'm first generation Canadian, so it was always burgers and fries for me. But the one dish my mom would always make was brown stew chicken as the one thing I would just crave. And so it was just like, okay, she was happy that I was happy, and I was just like, I don't know what it is about the dish that I love so much, but when I cook it and when I eat it, it does remind me of home.
It's like a comfort food.
Absolutely.
For you?
Yeah.
I'm curious,
Absolutely.
did you ask your mom, like, hey, can you teach me this recipe, like step by step? Like, how did you come to learn it? Or did you kind of already knew?
So I never actually I did ask her when I moved here, but I kind of understood like the basics of it just from watching her cook in the kitchen. And, you know, stealing little pieces here and there when I shouldn't be. As it's like stewing on the stove, I'm just sneaking myself in there. And that's kind of where I fell in love with cooking, where it was just like seeing the amount of effort and love that you put in it and the time to then you get this beautiful dish that, I mean, yes, I'll sneak in there tasting it, but every taste was different because as it's cooking slower and slower, it's developing those flavors. And not only did I appreciate the dish, but it made me appreciate my mother even more. Because she worked a full-time job. She would always come home and like be ready and just cook dinner. But Sundays it was clean. Well, we all clean with her and cook dinner, and we would have our brown stew chicken or curry goat. But brown stew was my favorite.
You know, there's something that really drew me when you were talking about earlier. It was that moment. Well, you said you started kind of like when your mom would step away from cooking it at like various or like intervals of the stage of cooking. Like, can you just bring us back to that moment and paint us a picture? Because I'm so curious about the variations between steps. Like the idea of steps, working with different ingredients and then watching each ingredient evolve is really fascinating to David and I, because it's literally changing on like a molecular, on a cellular level, and then somehow at the end it all comes out together. Like, how did we get here? You know?
Yeah. I would say, and the beauty of that is when I speak to my mother, she downplays her talents, right? she calls me sometimes. She's like, "Oh, how do I do this? Because you know you're the chef of the family." I was like, "I literally learned everything from you and watching you." And what she doesn't understand is like the simplicity of making sure that you're seasoning the chicken overnight and setting it aside for like 12 hours. You do these steps. She may not be hip to why she's doing it, but she understands it does change the end result, right? So it's just like when I called, she's like, yes, make sure you're seasoning it for 4 hours.
Right.
At least. I said, okay, well, like, what if I just want to do a quick season? It's like, well, no, it has to be 4 hours.
Yeah.
So just seeing her, like, kind of season it from there, set it aside, prep her veg, and the beauty is we had a garden in the back, so she would pick it as well. So we'd have the peppers and the onions and the garlic, all that fresh from the garden, which was also very beautiful to see. As again, just sitting there watching TV, and then my mom's just going into the back, picking, washing, and then beautifully was plating everything into the fridge.
Yeah.
From then to then browning it slowly and really taking her time, but then sitting back, drinking tea, looking at it again. You know, she's like, okay, now add a little bit more sugar. And as I'm watching my mom, everything was like meticulously timed, as much as she doesn't say it was. It very much was. She was very timed in everything. She's like, once I add a little bit of sugar, I'll go back outside and get the thyme.
Right.
So while that's kind of simmering, she'll go get the thyme, and that's when I sneak upstairs. I taste it, right? So I'll kind of give it a little taste. It's like, this is delicious. I'm ready to eat it now. Yeah. She'll catch me and yell, so I run. She'll put the thyme in, and then she'll add her Scotch bonnet.
That's so interesting because it's like a choreography.
Absolutely.
Of like, it's like dance and movement. But what I find so particularly fascinating about your mom's process is that she's not going to the garden and gathering all the ingredients at once. No. She's going back and forth as she's cooking. Is it so that it's as fresh as possible when you pick it to like the dish, or like why doesn't she just gather
Honestly,
it all?
I think she just forgets. She was like, oh wait.
That is so adorable. Okay, that's so fascinating. But then that means each time you're getting a more nuanced and complex flavor. Absolutely. And then it's like another profile that is emerging as you like sneakily interrupt these moments, you know, when your mom's not there.
Yes.
And you're like tasting it. That's so beautiful.
It feels like when you were describing how your mom was saying, would call you and saying, you know, you're the chef, how do I do this? I'm curious how since you've taken up being a chef, how has that shifted your relationship with your mom, or how do you guys, in terms of food?
We speak every day, and when I do call her, because it's such a time difference, she's usually making some type of soup. Right. And then she'll be like, should I add this to it? I was like, sure. Go ahead. Make the thing about food is food should be fun. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was just like, yes, it's a title that I have, but I mean, I know just as much as you because we're always learning.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because she like consults you when you got all of your like memory and like knowledge, lived knowledge from watching her and just being around her and absorbing that wisdom and absorbing those recipes. Yeah. You know? Absolutely. But for this dish, I'm curious, what is your favorite step?
I would say making the sauce.
Okay.
Yeah, making the sauce. Growing up, I always wanted to be a saucier. When I was thinking about becoming like a chef in like a 4-star hotel. Yeah. Because everyone has their own station, and if I could just be sat there making sauces all day, I would.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love asking that question because I find that it reveals so much about the person in terms of what the answer is. Yeah. My favorite step in the process of making food is the grocery shopping.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I also like prepping, but I like grocery shopping, and then I like cleaning as I go.
Right.
See, I like the grocery shopping and the cooking.
But you don't clean as you go.
I don't. No, that's Nathan's job.
I clean as I go. Yeah. I hate grocery shopping.
Really?
I despise it. Yeah.
I'm not allowed to go grocery shopping because I literally go down every aisle, peruse.
You have to.
And probably,
that's why I hate it.
Yeah. Purchase like 3 times the amount.
For myself, it has been a up and down battle in connecting back to my roots. Again, being first gen Canadian, I never really had any, I guess, desire to know anything about my ancestors or my relatives back home. A lot of them already lived in Ontario, and maybe it was just the privilege that I had in the moments growing up where, because I had such access to everything, I was content with that.
Right.
And it wasn't until in my teen years when I kind of started going out with my friends and we would go to restaurants, and most of them were Caribbean restaurants, and I'm seeing these prices, and I was like, I'm absolutely not paying this for something that I can make at home. I was like, wait, but I don't know how to make this at home.
Right,
And then I kind of spiraled. I was like, why don't I know how to make this at home?
Right.
So I started doing a bit more research on, you know, just like cooking Caribbean food, and I started falling in love with it there. But then I started having a little self-identity battle. Because around that time of me really exploring food is also when I was exploring my sexuality, and that's when I came out to my close friends. And then with that, more research on, you know, well, not even research, just knowing through experience the times that I would go back to Jamaica or my family would come here, they tend to be slightly homophobic.
Right.
So I kind of then put that on the back burner again, as far as trying to find where I belonged in both spaces of culinary, but culinary in a queer space and being Caribbean.
Right.
What feelings emerge when you eat this food? Like if you could isolate it. And then what feelings do you hope others could feel when you specifically eat it?
Yeah,
When
right.
specifically
When
eat
you're
it.
consuming
Okay.
it, like what do you feel in your body as it travels down your esophagus, into your stomach? Like you can be like as literal as possible
Okay.
in terms of what happens in your body.
When it touches the taste buds, I get this overwhelming sense of joy and comfort. And I guess I would say accomplishment. Solely from the fact, again, like I can be I'm my own worst critic when it comes to especially like culinary. And this dish is kind of just, it hones things back to the perspective of keeping it simple and do what you love to do. And when I was creating this dish for today, I had a little bit of sense of panic until, again, we took that bite and I was like, oh, right, this is really good. You know what I mean? And then the walls kind of go down. I'm just like, I can breathe again. Because I did it once again, even though you have that muscle memory.
Yeah.
But it depends again in what kind of avenue you're presenting to the dish.
Right.
Yeah.
But to know that I've done it so many times, and even though there are those fears, the end result has been the same, and then the feeling is as well. So when people eat the dish, I hope they get that sense of comfort and love. That's kind of my my mantra for when I'm cooking and what I want to kind of give out to the world.
You know what feeling I get from it? I feel like it's like reassurance. It's like what you're talking about, like I think we have moments of self-doubt.
Yeah.
And I think as like first-gen immigrants, as queers, there's just this inherent sense, and maybe not every queer or first-gen immigrant feels this, but I certainly feel like there is this insecurity and imposter syndrome, which so many people, so many of us feel on like such a deep level. So what I love about food, but especially comfort food, especially like homemade food, is that it creates this like coziness, groundedness. It literally creates this I don't know, this anchor for me. And so that's what I feel when I'm eating this dish is that sense of anchor and home. I may not have any roots traced back to the Caribbean, but it's like I think food is what transcends borders or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you're not intellectualizing, right? You're feeling.
Exactly.
You're feeling. You're using your senses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Kind of going back to what you were saying about food kind of being that anchor. Again, me starting that company, I say it loosely, but it did save my life because depression was like really taking over. Being in a city that I wasn't really familiar with, not really having a family or a home per se. Seeing where I'm at now with Elbo, and knowing where it's going to go, where I'm now on this direction of really being self-assured in my queerness and my blackness, and again being more drawn to the ancestors, and knowing that I may not be going the same beaten path, but I'm almost there. I'm taking my own path, but I'm still keeping honor to them in my way.
That's right. Just to kind of finalize that, something that sort of blew my mind recently is the concept that we are our future's ancestors.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is, whether or not you choose to, like my bloodline ends with me, so this is it. But what I put out there artistically, creatively for you, like the food that you put out there is a way that you're not just honoring your past ancestors, but like you are the ancestors that is giving and producing to the world. So I really love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us about Afro-Queer.
Yes. So it's a collection of friends of mine. We're all from different parts of the Caribbean, but we're all queer identifying. We found that in the city, there wasn't a safe space for us. And though there were plenty of POC parties, they would get watered down, and then they would become almost a space known for being POC, but also a hunting ground, if you will, for those that want to fetishize, essentially, because at the end of the day, that's what it was.
Right.
So we started Afro-Queer with very strict rules, and that there are certain things that you have to identify as, one being from the Caribbean diaspora, and Black identifying queer, obviously. We're in our 5th year. We kind of catered it to the point in which, again, the music, especially in Caribbean music, can be very hyper sexual, but also homophobic. So we're trying to find that balance in still celebrating our culture, but not making our patrons feel unsafe. I know for myself, growing up, we hear all those songs that we loved at the weddings, but then when you hear the lyrics, you're like, damn, this is something that's really against me, right? So at Afro-Queer, we still have the same essence of if you're at your aunt and uncle's wedding, but the music is more appropriate for us, our mental health, and our safety. Through my food, I feel like, again, calling myself your favorite auntie, and making such a staple food in Jamaica, because all Jamaicans love a Jamaican patty. They know it. They die by it. You know what I mean? And for it to come from me, first-gen Canadian queer child, and they enjoy it. There's a little bit of queerness in there. I said, you enjoy that patty, then you enjoy me. So then you love my family. You know what I mean?
Oh, I love that.
But it took a long time to get there. I'm still even kind of grappling with battling both. I would say I'm more comfortable with my queerness than I am speaking of my heritage. One, just from not really knowing much of the history. Like I said earlier, I spent a lot of my childhood denouncing it, if you will, because I just wanted to fit in with everybody else. So I'm kind of playing catch up right now, where that's why Elbo is so important to me, and doing things like this is so important, because every little step that I take, I may not be an expert in the language around it, but I still have that feeling towards it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
That's perfect.